can remember a very professional, well, I'll say it was John Laporta. I was at a big band camp at Stores, Connecticut, and we had gone out with somebody in their car to get an ice cream cone. I'm in the back seat, and I just come out with my first play-along record. Of course, it looked like this, with LP, that I lugged on the airplane up there and was trying to sell a couple to the students. And he must have understood that my first 3 tracks were Dorian minors. So he's eating his ice cream, and I'm in the back seat, and the guy's driving, and John says, I don't consider the Dorian minor scale to be an entity in itself. Well, that went right over my head until I got back to the dormitory, and then I realized he didn't like my new approach to jazz improvisation of telling the student what the scale is. At that time, I didn't even darken in the chord tones. As a matter of fact, there was a scale page, and I just put the symbol F minor, period, F minor 7. They were supposed to know that scale. If they didn't know it, they went back to the page. But my point in saying this is, I think I was of the opinion early on that if you showed the person the scale that's being sounded, that would help them to play the sound and to possibly make music and improvise and feel good about what they're doing and not give up.
Yeah.
Very, very important.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Jamey. I just interviewed on the show this last month Bert Ligon, who is a UNT North Texas grad, and he had a really funny comment that has just stuck with me. He said, "He goes, I must admit, Bob," he said, "I don't practice scales anymore," and it hit me odd when he first said it. He goes, "But I do practice." He said, "I do practice arpeggios all the time with passing tones."
Oh. Ooh.
Right?
What a sneaky way to say the same thing. Hey, Bert's book, he's got 1 or 2 books out. Very, very good. Excellent book.
Very excellent books. But, but he was making that point of how important, how you blacked in the chord tones, right? You got your scale written out in your books and you black in. That's basically, he's saying that's how he hears it. He hears that chord, that arpeggio inside that scale, right?
Right.
So he says, I practice my arpeggios with passing tones. Yeah, interesting.
Do you mind if I add you to my big jazz email list?
Oh, no, I'd love that. Yeah.
Because a couple of months ago, we had a discussion amongst 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 musicians about Coleman Hawkins versus Lester Young, the accordal vertical approach versus the horizontal approach, and so forth.
Linear, right. Yeah, that'd be that. Yeah, I'd enjoy getting in on that discussion. That would be fantastic.
Can I play one more thing on the piano?
Oh, absolutely, Jamey. You can play whatever you want. I have nowhere to go today, man.
I wish I could play the piano. Okay, this. You can't see that. Okay, here's something that I like to do, and that is. You just can't.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, here, I'll lower it a little bit. You can't see it, though. It's not good. And I don't want to touch this thing. I'll get it done. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I do this for all instrumentalists. And I always do it once a week at the camp on the grand piano, sitting on the stage. Now, I want you to listen to this. I'm going to put a B flat in the melody above middle C. And that note is going to be in every scale, every chord I hit, okay? And I want to show you the possibilities.
Right. Yeah,
so I'm going to start with a B flat triad. Now the bass note is going to come up in half steps. So when I go to B, that B flat on the top is now the major 7.
Correct.
When I go to C, it's the lowered 7th of a minor, R, a major, R.
Right. That's exactly
now
right.
Now that's 6. I'm in the key of C sharp or D flat now. Now the melody note is there. That's a major chord, R, the key B minor. When I go to D, that B flat is suddenly the sharp 5, the pretty note of the scale. Now let's go to E flat. That B flat is the 5th of major.
Correct. Right.
Minor. Could be half the note.
Half the note, right.
I hit that chord right. And now we're going to go to E. And that B flat is a sharp 4. Now we go to F, and it's the 4th of minor. And usually when I get here, I do something like this.
Right.
I say this sound is part of salsa music, and then on some signal they go, and they stay there for 2 days, and then on some signal they come back into town.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And then you go to F sharp. You still got that B flat up there as the third of major. R could be the third of dominant. Now when you get to the G, it's the sharp 9.
Yeah. Lovely.
Then you go to A flat, it's the 9th of major. Major, R dominant, R minor. And when you go to the A and the root, it comes up with a F sharp triad in the melody. C sharp, F sharp, and A sharp. And that chord there I associate with one of Wayne Shorter's tunes. And then the next note in the left hand is going to be the B flat, and you're back to a triad.
There you go.
So if I were to do that fast.
Yeah, right. You have to have a pretty strong understanding of harmony.
Yes, you do, or a whole lot of messing around.
Right, or a whole lot of messing around. The same gentleman, Warren Parrish, who told me that, and he always, after the tritone sub comment that he made, he from there on referred to me as college boy, because I used the term tritone sub. He referred to me as college boy.
Right.
But the same, he also said to me when I was a young boy, he said, "Do you really want to improvise? Do you really want to improvise?" I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Do you want to get good at playing melodies and improvise?" I said, "Yes, of course I do." And then he said, "Well, then study harmony."
Study hard.
Yeah, and I thought, study harmony, because at 14 I was thinking harmony and melody were two different things. I didn't realize they were one and the same. And again, he was stressing the importance that melody flowing from that harmonic understanding of the chords that you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was very fascinating. It stuck, another comment that just stuck with me all my life.
Yes, yeah. Have you ever thought much about the left and the right brain and how it affects a person's approach to the keyboard, or to music, or to melody, or to their own creativity?
And I have students ask me that all the time about that, and in a kind of a tongue-in-cheek answer I always give them. I always say, "Hey, you know what? I want you to use both sides of the brain."
Exactly. Yeah.
I want you to use the whole thing.
Yeah, I have this description, or it's a picture of the left and the right brain and what goes on. It's from Joe Raposo's book, The Whole Brain Approach, to Improvisation. Yes.
Wow.
And I got that back in the 80s from him, and it made me stop and think. I grew up as a right brain person.
Right.
Scales were something you did that was, it was not fun. It was not fun. If my teacher way back there said, "Jamey, next week, after playing the piano and practicing for a year or two, next week I want you to come in and play. I want you to play a little solo. I want you to improvise. I want you to make something up." Boy, don't you know I'd still be playing the piano, and I wouldn't have had to wander over to banjo, sax, flute, piano, all this other stuff. I would have been a piano player, and I would have had the chops to do what I hear in my head.
Right.
But that,
you grew up in a time, though, that you had to be, left brain focused, because the books, the materials didn't really start surfacing till the 60s, right? Till the very first book I had was the old John McHegan Jazz Pianist book, right? He had a 3-volume.
Yes.
Do you remember that book, that series?
Oh yeah.
In fact, I use that chart all the time. The 60 jazz chords out of the McHegan book, called the Jazz Pianist.
Exactly.
But until then, no. You had to just listen and poke around and roam and be creative, right?
Yes. You made me think of something else. We were at Elmhurst. We did our camps at Elmhurst College for years. And one night, the faculty were playing like they would do. 3 groups would play a night. But on this particular night, a famous jazz piano player who was working with me was accompanying and playing piano for a tenor and a trumpet. And during the tenor's solo on some tune, he kind of got off. So from a piano standpoint, when you hear somebody get off, you start feeding him some chords to help him get back on.
Right. Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, so what did this person do?
Nothing.
Right. They stopped playing and kind of sat back on the keyboard. And I'm sitting over here in the lobby. It was in a big open room listening. And I said, don't do that.
Don't do
To
right.
myself. I said, give him some chords, put him back on track.
Help him.
He didn't help him. No. Oh, so I'm telling you piano players out there that this is an important story in my life. When that concert was over, I took him aside and I said, I don't appreciate what you did. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you know what I'm talking about. So-and-so was lost, and you didn't give him the help that you should have given him. Hey, man, these guys shouldn't be playing if they can't keep their place. I said, hey, these people are not playing 6 nights a week like you. These people are educators. They're here because I asked them to come here to teach, not to play on a concert. But it's their choice to play or to not to play. And it should be your choice to always help the people playing, because you're going to make a fool of these people in front of all these students here. So that was the end of that, you know.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone, if they're being completely honest, who hasn't got lost or turned around in a tune or turned around in time. It happens to everybody.
Oh yeah,
and we all need that help once in a while, man. You know, I've looked up many times at the drummer, like, hey, I'm turned around, and he's got to give me some kind of rim shot or something to get me back. Oh, there's one.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, if it really gets turned around, you look at the hi hat. If all of a sudden the hi hat's on 1 and 3.
Right. That's right.
You know,
that's exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. So, okay, talk about improvisation practice, right? This is almost seems like, to a lot of people, this almost seems like contradictory terms. Improvisation, practicing improvisation, because they're thinking, wait a minute, improvisation isn't that supposed to be improvisation? Yeah. So, what would you say to listeners about the do's and don'ts about starting to really develop good habits of practicing improvisation?
Well, I think it comes back to the scales and the arpeggios.
It sure does.
I think it comes back to that. And I think that's where some of your classical piano books for the scales start. What are the Czerny? Is that it?
The Czerny, Hannon, Czerny, right.
Yeah. I've noticed over the years that young players that come to the camp with a classical piano background from scales and so forth, their improvisations and their solos seem to come together quicker, and they're easier to teach because they're not fumbling over the fingering for various scales. They're not putting a thumb in the wrong spot, or you know, they don't know how to go under, or this, that, and the other. It sounds fumbly. So I think the classical training for scales is very, very important. What was the rest of that question?
Well, just practicing.
Oh, improvisation. Yes,
practicing improvisation.
Okay, so I think you come back to this thing, Bob, and that is, do I really have it? My soloing does not sound very good. My practice sessions are not very good. Whew. I just wonder if I ought to give up, you know. The ego comes in and puts fear into you, F-E-A-R. False evidence assumed real, F-E-A-R. Fear.
Very good. Very
False evidence assumed real. I can't do this. So I think most of us have a continuous battle until we get over the hump with your ego. And it would like you to go get a pizza, put a video on, call your friend, do this, do that. Don't practice. Don't practice. You know? But I think if you can get past that hump, and at the same time realize that everybody, well, like I say, anyone can improvise, and they can. And it's like my friend from Louisville that wrote me years ago and said, Jamey, I don't agree with that saying. Da, 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 da. And I waited a week to answer back, and I said, I think you're thinking that I'm thinking. Everybody's going to sound like a great jazzer. That's not what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is, if this kid can play 8 bars and keep his place and play melodies that come from his head, and the right hand on the keyboard at a slow tempo with my volume 1 play-along track, and what he plays is original and new, and I, Jamey, have never heard it before, and it sounds like melodies, anyone can improvise.
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
You know,
yeah, you're right. Are you familiar with, there's a music, hang on, let me grab this book. There's a music, philosopher. When I was at North Texas, I was turned on to this guy. It's called Musicking by
No.
by Christopher Small. And you notice how he's spelling
Yeah.
music, right, with that K?
Mm-hmm.
Well, his whole thing is that we got to stop treating music like a noun and start treating it like a verb. It's what people do, and that
Oh.
it's really a birthright. It's like a birthright of speech. It's a
Yeah.
birthright to be able to express ourselves musically. And there are cultures, different cultures around the world where it's just everyone expresses themselves musically. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean, just like in our culture, not all of us are gifted with words. So all of us are not going to be great speakers. All of us are not going to be great writers, but we never say to any child here, don't speak,
Yeah.
don't write. Express yourself, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in music, what you're saying, I concur with 100%. It's your right to improvise. It's your
Yeah.
right to express yourself with this art form. Do that. It doesn't mean you're going to sound like Oscar Peterson. In fact, I had a teacher one time say to me, Jamey, he said, Bob, because I said I wasn't really excited about transcribing Oscar Peterson, and I said to him, I said, I don't really want to sound like Oscar Peterson. And he said to me, he said, Bob, he said, you will never sound like Oscar Peterson.
Right.
And my heart fell to my feet. But then you know what he said, Jamey? I love this. He looked at me and he said, and Bob, Oscar Peterson will never sound like you.
Oh, that's good.
Is that
Yeah.
not good? Right?
Yeah.
And so he was trying to say, you become you.
Yeah.
Find you and play you. And what you're saying, while everyone can improvise, you're encouraging everybody to find yourself in this music.
Sure.
Everybody's not going to be John Coltrane.
You mentioned Oscar Peterson. I have so many memories. I'm 82 and I'm on my way to 83. I'm at Indiana University. I've got my little web core set up on the chair, a record player, the big old piano's over here, and I got my saxophone out, and I'm listening to Oscar Peterson at the Concertbo or something, the windmill on the cover, the jacket. And he's playing. And I put the record on, I'm just listening to music. And all of a sudden, I raise the needle up and I say, was that a scale he just played? Now, I'm in college, and I'd love to know which year this was. Was I 17, 18, 19, or 20? So I go over to the piano and play just a little bit of what he played, and I say, oh my gosh, he's playing scales, just like I've been playing for 18 years. But wow, how fast does he do that, And then moving years on, a month ago, I'm up in Bloomington doing this jam session with 21 people in this room. And it's not a good situation for a jam session because each person is going to take one chorus of blue bossa or one chorus of the blues. There's too many people.
Right.
But there's a little clarinet player. He looks like he's about 10 years old. He came a little late. He's set up over by the piano. He's got his piece of music, which I've given him, and we're doing blue bossa.
Yeah.
He plays a chorus, and I walk over to him because he's lost. I take my finger, and I point to the page, and I put him back on track. And I said, now, let's take another chorus. Now, just play the roots. And he goes, do, do. And I'm moving my finger, do, do, do. He goes through a chorus. Then I say, okay, take another chorus. Play the first three notes of the scale. And he goes, 1, 2, do, do, dee, da, 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 da. He goes all the way through. 20 people clap.
Great.
Now, and I thought about that on the way home. I got 90 miles to drive, and I'm going to stop at the Golden Corral and get supper because I'm starving. But I'm thinking, why did they clap? Well, that's so nice. Give encouragement to the kid. I tell you why I think they clapped. Because they could hear the harmony to the tune.
Yeah.
And all the boy was doing was playing the root and then the 1, 2, 3. You want to hear the tune. You want to hear the harmony to the tune being played. And your brain can do it, but the fingers can't find it unless they're equipped with their scales, proper scales, and proper chords. You know?
Yeah. And you don't have to, with students, what you're talking about there, you don't have to be fancy. You could play
No.
great. You could play great music and sound fantastic and play
Oh,
very
yeah,
little,
yeah,
right? But we
sure.
get there's this myth that we have to fill up. We have to fill up the room with all kinds of
Yeah.
notes. You know.
Well, I think that's the ego talking to us because we feel like every time we play, we're being compared. And even if there's nobody in the room, God is listening to you and
Right.
judging, your
Yes.
solo.
Right.
He's
Right.
judging your practice habits. He's
Right.
judging your sound, your articulation,
Right.
your breathing, all of this stuff. But that's not the case. It's an eternal fight, I think, with the ego to get to the point where you feel good about yourself and what you're playing, and this is you, and you will never sound like Oscar Peterson,
Right.
and you never sound,
Yeah.
you
You
know,
know what? Yeah, one of my favorite Bill Evans quotes. Bill Evans said, it's ironic that being a professional performer, he said, I'd much rather perform. I'd much rather play without an audience. And
mm,
when you hear that quote initially, you think, well, that's odd. But when you
yeah,
really think about it, what he's saying is that he can put all that aside.
yeah,
He can put all that ego aside. He can put all that stuff aside and sit in his living room and play and be him
yeah,
and be truly 100% him. And I
yeah,
thought, man, what I wouldn't give to be a fly on the wall when
yeah,
he's sitting at home in his living room by himself playing.
right, yeah,
Right? Holy cow! Right?
mhm,
So, okay, Jamey, what about? And this is, I got to be honest with you, your play-alongs helped a ton with this. Time development. How should students practice time? We don't talk about that enough, right?
no,
The practicing of time.
yeah,
We're always talking about practicing scales, arpeggios, chords, voicings. But what about time? How would you encourage students to approach practicing time? Because quite honestly, what we were just talking about, you could play very little, but if you're playing in time with a good
right,
feel and a good groove, you're sounding fantastic.
oh yeah, yeah, you can take two or three notes and you can make those notes swing. And
Correct.
there's several things here. I practice with a metronome, number one. Practice with the metronome on 2 and 4. 1, do,
Right.
do, 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 bop, boop, dee.
Right.
Do, 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 boo, do, dee, bop, bop. Boo, do, 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 bip, ba, do, dee, do, 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 do,
There you
dee,
go.
boo, dip. And there was a chorus of blues.
Right.
Foot started tapping.
Yeah.
I was playing with somebody recently, and they didn't play. It was an instrumentalist, and they didn't play in time. We had a good
Mm.
rhythm section, but they played across the time, and I thought that was very interesting. And then when I played, I noticed out of the corner of my eye that this person's foot would start tapping when I was playing because I play time,
Correct.
which
Correct.
made me think about: do people play time? Oh yeah, they play time. Now, so I think practicing with a metronome, number one. And number two, for beginners, just playing with my play along records. Most of them keep pretty good time. And some
That's
of the ones that
right.
used to rush, I've had them straightened out electronically now. Okay?
Right.
There were
Right.
certain rhythm sections that would rush. They would get excited.
They
I
get
think,
excited.
oh,
That's a normal thing.
yes, it is. And I think most of us agree that rushing a little bit, hopefully not a whole lot, it gives excitement to the piece that you're playing.
Correct.
But if you slow down, it's like somebody pushing you into a grave, and you don't, it's like dying. So slowing down is worse. We played it
Right.
here 2 days ago in
Oh,
3/4. Blue Daniel, boodle it up, boodle it up. Boodle beat up, boodle boodle. By the time the piano, the bass, the drums, and myself had solo, boodle it up, boodle it up, boodle it up. I couldn't play the melody on the way out. But
that's hilarious.
we all agreed
Oh.
it rushed, but I don't
Oh.
think anybody could pinpoint when it took off because it was
Right.
gradual. So that's where
Right.
you're known, I think, and the play-alongs become helpful because they keep the tempo the same. Um,
Right. Right.
so I think
Right.
practice and time, but you also want to think if you're a wind player, trumpet, clarinet, sax, then you have to get your articulation together. And inside my jazz handbook
Yep.
are 2 pages of how to practice scales and chords using articulation that Sonny Rollins practiced, and he showed Freddie Hubbard. Freddie Hubbard showed my good friend in college, Dick Washburn. Dick Washburn
Right.
showed me, and I worked about a month on it in college, and it was one of the hardest things I ever did. You just, and you can do this with your piano too, of course, with the fingers. You're going to play just a major scale up to the ninth and back down. Boo da doo 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 da doo da doo doo doo
Oh
doo.
yeah.
I'm accenting one. Now you're going to accent two. Boo da doo 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 da doo 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 doo
Yes. Right.
da doo da. I'm having to
Right.
really think to do that. I
Right.
worked on that for a month, and I got to where I could play my saxophone. Do 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 be do 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 do. Those humps in articulation are what
Right.
we need. All right.
Right.
And that comes from up here, but it comes from practicing. And on the piano, you need to practice it.
Oh, that's right. You have to be able to track time. You have to be able to track time. And I had a piano teacher. And again, when I was young, I thought he was a nut too. All these piano teachers I thought were nuts until I got older and I realized how brilliant they are. They were. But he used to sit there, Jamey. He used to sit there and he'd establish a pulse time, and then he would sit there and comp. And he's hearing like bass and drums in his head. He's just comping. and
Yeah.
and and you could feel, even as a 14-year-old, I could feel the time.
Mm.
I could feel the time in his comping, and he would do that for like 5 minutes, and I'm just sitting there kind of listening, and then he'd finally look up and smile, and he'd look at me and he goes, "I could do this all day," and
Oh,
and
good.
and I
You had
thought,
you had some great teachers.
oh well, thank you. I absolutely did, and I remember thinking, man, he can do that all day. There's no melody.
Yeah.
He's just comping. He's just comping. He's playing what. I look back on that. He was practicing. He was playing time, and
Yeah.
time, as you know, Jamey, time feels really good.
Oh, it does. You remind me of a story. A month ago, I put my earphones on at the kitchen table. My wife had gone to bed. I'm going to listen to this interview with Jimmy Heath. No. James Moody, Ron
Oh
Chord,
wow, wow,
and they're talking about kind of blue, the Miles Davis thing.
right,
Have you
right.
heard that?
Oh
Okay.
yeah,
So it's 1 hour, and I never do this. I put the headphones on, I'm at the table, turn the TV off, and I listen to the whole thing. It was very interesting. And on the way out, it's going boom, be, shoot. Ding, 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 boom, beep, bump. They're playing the so what? Yeah, exactly. They're playing that.
yeah.
So here's what I'd
Classic.
never done. I'd never done this before. But as that background is going, I'm singing at the table to myself, and I'm not singing. I'm thinking.
Okay.
And then it went on for a minute, and it kind of fades out, and then it stopped, and the show stopped, so the screen goes black. But I'm still hearing the rhythm section, and I'm still improvising. And then I start thinking the fingerings on my saxophone. This went on for about 5 minutes, Bob. I've never ever done this before.
Wow.
When I finished, I said, "That was the best solo I ever played." Oh, I'd like to just keep doing that. Just mentally sing. Oh, and it felt. We're talking about time. It felt so good, and it gives me a
Right.
chill up the back of my head just telling you this short story because I'd like to be there all the time. Forget the saxophone. Forget the piano. Just give me that little time thing in the
That
background.
that
And another thing, I never moved up to E flat minor.
Oh, you never did.
No, I was just, and of course, I've never ever done that. That tune has two scales. I
Correct.
just stayed on D minor, and I went out across this musical desert, and it was getting close to midnight probably, and that was the best I felt musically, and I had no instrument. I was just thinking, and all it took was one little scale,
Yeah.
and
Isn't that
it,
right?
it was endless ideas, simple little ideas. No,
Right.
no fast stuff that I often feel
Right.
I need to play. Just simple
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Music, so it's so great.
It's fantastic, right? What you were doing there, not only time, but like I tell students, I tell students all the time to isolate sound, right? So
Yeah,
isolate a D minor sound, isolate
right,
a half diminished sound, whatever, right? Isolate that sound, and then I tell students, bathe, bathe in that sound,
right.
bathe in it, right? And that's
Yeah.
what, if you bathe in that sound and in time, could you could do that all day and all
Yeah.
night, could you not?
when I finished that little mental session that night, I said, man, I'd love to play for the rhythm section. But then I immediately thought, I don't think I could get a piano player to just play simply and not get in the way. And the bass player is not going to play those kind of lines that I was imagining, and the drummer would maybe be too busy. So
Right.
uh, I'm not going to do that. I think I'll just keep this in my mind. I'll save it and tell Bob today about it.
Okay, good.
You
I,
brought back memory. I haven't thought about it since then.
oh man, that's awesome, Jamey. That's awesome.
Hmm.
So, okay, I want to kind of change our path here for a second because I know something. In fact, Dan Hurley brought it up to me when I was talking to him, and I want you to talk about it because I know it's a passion. You're very passionate about this, and I want you just to share some thoughts about smoking and 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 you've been very educational about smoking and where does this come from? How did this come about? Yeah, I want you to talk. I want you to talk about this. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. So where did this passion for educating people about the harmfulness of smoking? Talk to us about that for a second.
About 25 or 6, 7, 8 years ago, a fellow from the local cancer society, I guess he knew I didn't like smoking. I'm not sure how this, maybe I stopped in to get some literature. That's what it was. And then he called me. He said, Jamey, could you go talk to the fifth grade class in New Albany at Mount Tabor School about smoking? I said, well, I've never done that before. And then I went back and got some literature, and I went and talked to him. I still remember the day. And I'm not sure what props I had at that point. I probably took my saxophone. I said, I'll take my saxophone and play. And but the next thing you know, I said, let's do this on a bigger scale. Let's do it for the whole school in the gym or in the auditorium because I hate smoking. Oh, and that, yeah, sure, the 90s, that's when smoking and Bill Clinton were
Uh,
fighting one another. You couldn't get a USA Today newspaper with the back page with, it had the 50 states and it had a sentence or a little short paragraph about every state. There would always be one state that had something about smoking. They're
Okay.
going to abandon smoking in Aberdeen, North Carolina. You know what this that,
Right.
smoking was very big. And then Monica Lewinsky came along with Bill Clinton. The smoking thing disappeared, went completely off the scene. And I read that North Carolina legislators had met in Washington, and they tobacco people, and they met and they said to the legislators, "You need to get Bill Clinton off of tobacco's back because we
Oh.
need to keep tobacco going." Next thing you know, Monica Lewinsky was on the front page of everything, and that went on for a while. But during that time, 1998, Congress and the tobacco companies came up with this tobacco settlement, and they're going to give the states lots and lots of money every year, which they've been doing. And the tobacco companies at that point immediately changed their focus. They had to make sure that when this money came into the millions of dollars every year to every state, they had to make sure that that money went to fix roadways,
Okay.
sidewalks, sewers. Don't you dare do anything to stop people from smoking, or
Right.
we're going to lose our income. So that
Right.
that was one area of it. I got my piano, bass, and drums together. I got smoking literature together. I got my overhead projector. I made a ton of transparencies. I borrowed good lungs and bad lungs from the University of Louisville School of Medicine. I still have them. And we went out and we played jazz and we promoted freedom and music. And then
Right.
we said, and this is how you can lock yourself up by smoking, you know.
Right.
Took the big cigarette. We passed out the Quit Easy Smoking books, which I still have and still give out.
Right.
Next thing you know, kids in this area weren't smoking nearly as much. I still have people coming up to me, and they're like in their 20s now. Oh, you're Mr. Aebersold. Yeah, I said, what school did what school were you in when we came and did our program? He said, oh, I was out at Fairmont. You know, they remembered. I said,
They
what do you
know.
remember?
Right.
He said, well, you played. Oh, you had instruments. You played instruments, and you had those lungs. I said, right. I said, did you ever smoke?
Right.
Yeah, oh no, I'm not going to smoke. So anyhow, I've been fighting big tobacco with billboards on I-65 for 10 or 12 years, which costs thousands of dollars. I print these books. I paid the
Right.
guys to go out and play the
Wow.
school programs, and we introduced them to what tobacco can do to you. You know, as a
Right.
matter of fact, I'm talking to the Central Christian churches in New Albany men's class Tuesday night, and I'm talking to them about smoking.
Yeah.
They want to know
Well,
about.
it's fascinating that you're behind this so passionately, because in jazz, in our
Oh,
profession, right, smoking is like I mean, it's like you can't even go to a jam session without people
yeah.
lighting up cigarettes, and it drives me nuts.
Now,
So
Bob, I hope that's not the situation now.
no, it's not. It used to be.
Right.
It's very different now.
Oh, we grew up in it. You know.
That's what you. It was just like it was just commonplace. I mean, it was just like normal.
Did you ever hang your suit coat or your tie up on outside the house when you come home at night
Oh,
because or in the garage?
you couldn't go do a gig. It smelled so bad.
Yeah.
The clothes you couldn't take them in the house. It was smelled
No.
so bad.
You come
Yeah,
home and you're lay down in the bed and your wife says your hair stinks. You
yeah,
stink.
yeah.
Oh
You
yeah.
stink, right? Yeah. So
Well, anyhow, and once I realized how much profit the tobacco companies were making off of dead people and their product, then I decided to fight them.
yeah, good for
And I
you,
this
Jamey.
this is I stop people on the street. I was at Walmart yesterday or 2 days ago. And there's a lady. They're getting in the car with their groceries. And I'm right next to them. And I opened my door and I got my cart. I said, "I've been looking all over for you." I point to the lady. She turned. What? I said, "I've been looking all over for you." And I put the groceries in. I said, "I just said that to get your attention." And I reached in and hang on.
She probably Jamie. She had to think you're crazy. Oh, so,
And I gave her a book. I said, "Here, I've been
good.
looking all over for you."
Yeah, good for
Oh,
you.
thank you. Oh, thank you. I played a job 2 weeks ago. It's a white court dinner for the hospital. Everybody's got suit and tie on. It's a big deal. Okay.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
finish our part and we go outside. I load my car up, and over here, 40 feet away, is a guy smoking a cigarette with a suit and tie on. I go around. Hey, roll the window down. Hey, come here. He comes over. I said, "I've been looking all over for you." I said, I hand him the book. I go like that and hand him the book. He says, "Oh, thank you."
Wow,
It was like a dying man, and you give
wow,
him a drink of water. He says,
wow.
"Oh, thank you.
Oh,
I
wow.
appreciate
Yeah,
that. Thank
yeah.
you."
That's awesome.
I was there, and I drive away, and I say, "That might be the one that helps him to quit, and if he quits, it'll add years to his life." When I
Oh,
was a
that's
kid,
fantastic.
I wanted to be a minister, Methodist church minister, and I
Yeah.
can remember going into church, down the steps to the basement one day, and there's Reverend Keith. And I walked up to him and I said, "Reverend Keith, hi, I'm not going to be a preacher. Now, don't ask me why I decided not to be a preacher, but I've been
There you
preaching.
go. Now you're preaching. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I've
you're
been preaching
preaching
creativity.
jazz. I
You
love
know,
it. Two
I
very,
want I
yeah,
want
two
the
very,
people to stay. I want people to stay on the planet for a long time. But as I've gotten older, you got to be in good health, or you're not
yep.
going to enjoy playing the piano.
Yeah, that's right. That's
You
exactly
got
right.
you got to be in good health. You got to be in good health. So it's the
Yep,
first thing you got to do is take care of that.
absolutely. Okay, I got another question for you.
All right.
Is it true? Is it true that you have a street named after you there in Indiana?
Well, yes, but I didn't name it. My dad did. Where I live right now, I'm in the basement of my house. We've built on this house two or three times, so it's just a ranch house from the front. But once you get in, it's a maze down here. And I've worked out of here since 1967, when my first play along record came out, and when we moved into this house.
Is that
But
where all the
this,
is that where they were recorded, Jamie? Right there in the house?
yes, not in this room. Well, yes, yeah, piano was right in back of me here, and
Wow.
we shut the door, and the bass player was in the next room. Shut that door, the drummer was in the next room. We used headphones. I sit over here at the desk and say, "Don't rush, don't rush." But all of this property here, and I don't know how many acres it is. I'm going to say it's 20 acres, maybe 25 acres, down through here, used to belong to my father. Had a short section over there with his florist and a house. But all around him, like a horseshoe, was this farm that his relatives owned. The two
Okay.
guys, they were bachelors. And when they died, he bought all this property. When you buy the property, he put two streets in. One of them was Aebersold Court, just a short block, and the other one was kind of a L-shaped street. And he gave each of us three boys two lots, and my wife-to-be chose these two lots down here. My other two brothers chose them up the street and back of the floors. And he sold one big lot to a church here and sold another church a lot at the end of the property. So we got two churches here and two Aebersold streets, Aebersold Court and Aebersold Drive.
I think that's awesome, man. I think that's fantastic. So,
Sometimes it hadn't happened in a while, but sometimes when I'm out doing a clinic overnight, someone will say, Mr. Aebersold, I noticed you live on your street? I said, yes, I do. And I said, I called my wife last night, and she told me somebody broke the lock on the street again.
oh, that is so funny.
And there's a lock on the street. Yeah, so
Oh,
I have not moved very far from home, although I've been around the world a lot. But
right,
I
right.
like it right here, Bob.
I don't blame you. So now I also understand, and this only makes sense because you're there in Indiana, for heaven's sakes. But I also understand you're a big basketball nut, which would make sense, right? Here we go. Let's bring out the glory days. What's it say? Oh yeah, Jamey Aebersold, world records, most consecutive free throws and most consecutive 3-point shots by a jazz musician. Hey, what's that number? I'm going to see if I can break. I want to see if I can break your record. What's the number? Most consecutive shots.
Free throws is 53.
You made 53 in a row. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out in my backyard later today. I'm going to start practicing.
Do
Do you have to live in Indiana to beat that record? I guess you would.
No,
have.
no, you don't have to.
Okay.
But I shot a lot of basketball, and my record for 3-pointers is 26. But
Wow, that's good. Wow.
one time I hit, I don't know, there's a double rim down at a elementary school. Double rim.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
And it might as well have a sign on it saying, "Don't bother shooting here because I'm going to wreck every shot." I just gotten a brand new basketball, and I went to stop by. It was a summer day, and I started shooting 1, 2. I'm shooting threes, and if the ball went over there, I would shoot from there. So I'm shooting all around 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And about that point, I said, I think I'm going to break my record of 26. But I missed. I think I missed 25 and I missed 28. I went on up in the 30s. But whatever I did there was like 91%. But it just felt so good, But I've ruined my right shoulder from shooting too many 3-point hook shots. So I can't shoot the ball now at all. So I haven't shot in about 5 years.
Yeah, wow. So is your favorite movie Hoosiers?
Oh, yes. They have a remake with all the parts that were cut out.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, it's been a year or so ago. I would love to see. The thing I read said, have you ever watched Hoosiers and maybe thought at certain points, ooh, that was a sort of strange, we went from this to this. They put in the parts that were cut out.
Oh, I'd love to see that too. That's a
Yeah,
great.
They had a grand showing in Indianapolis, and I was busy, but I really wanted to go up and I wanted to see the whole thing the way it was put together because I think it would make more sense.
Yeah.
I've played it. I've been by that school.
Have you really?
Is
it still an active school?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a small school, but I took a picture of the school and I got the picture on my wall somewhere.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, I got another question for you too. Is it true that famous voice at the beginning of all those play along tracks, the 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, is that you?
Oh yeah.
It's great.
Oh yeah.
It's awesome.
They've used that. I've got somewhere here a cassette or a CD that someone sent me. It was a group in Europe. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. They took my count off and just inserted it in this. So
that's
I know
funny, man.
a lot of jokes out of that. When I got my NEA National Endowment for the Arts Award in 2014, and I'm writing and emailing the lady as she gets the whole thing together, the video together that they're going to play in New York when I'm there with all the other people. I said, now you got to have my count off. She didn't know, I don't think, what the count off was. I says, you've got to start my video with that count off because people recognize my voice just by me saying 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I got to New York, I'd forgotten about that. My family's there. We're sitting. They got the big screen. We're in, what's it called? Lincoln Center. Wynton Marsalis is there and Jimmy is there and so forth. And they're starting to play my portion. And I said to myself, I hope they start with the count off. And they did. It was great. The screen is silent, and it goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I said, great, you did it.
That's awesome.
I've had people that I've never met come up to me. They'll hear me in conversation and say, are you Jamey Aebersold? And I'll say, yeah. And they'll say, I thought so. And they have a play-along record, and they can recognize my voice off of the count-off. That's pretty distinctive, isn't it?
It sure is. Something I want to mention real quick. I held up this album, right? Your 251. Yep. But I'm going to tell you a funny story about this. You'll get a kick out of it. One of my students who has studied jazz piano with me now for quite a long time, her and her husband, her name is Linda, and her new husband here is Charlie. They literally put your 251 collection on their album when they crack open a bottle of wine and they want a romantic evening. They put 251 on by Jamey Aebersold.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, but a friend of mine, what's his name? He lives in L.A. He's a trumpet player. He was in a hotel in California, L.A. He's going up the elevator, and they're playing the 251 progression. He stays on the elevator to see if it did in the track. This was back for LPs. And sure enough, the next track starts with my count off. He goes to his room. He calls down to the counter and wants just inquiring about the music. Wants to know where they got that and what that was. And they didn't say anything. He gets back on the elevator, and they've taken it off. But I thought it was interesting. Another one.
That's so funny.
I think it's the 251. A guy was traveling across Texas. He's got the radio on, and the guy, the disc jockey is playing the LP Volume 3. And when he gets through, he says, that was the Jamey Aebersold trio. There's something about the repetitiveness of the part things, I guess, that appeals.
Well, see, you had no idea that a couple in Texas would be using your 251 album as a romantic evening at home with a glass of wine, and oh my gosh,
that's great.
So funny.
That's cute.
So, all right, Jamey, this has been so much fun. Before we wrap it up for today, final words of encouragement, pearls of wisdom from Jamey Aebersold to all the Jazz Piano Skills listeners. The microphone is yours.
Watch what you eat, watch what you drink, watch what you think. Use mental hygiene. Think about what you're going to think. You're okay. You can do it. Anyone can improvise. Scales and chords, bits and pieces of scales and chords is what's inside your mind. You got to get it out your fingers if you're a piano player. Yep. Listen, 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 listen.
Yep.
Stay connected to Bob. He's a good man.
Oh, thanks, Jamey. Thank you, Jamey.
Oh, thank you.
I can't even begin to express how grateful I am that you've come on Jazz Piano Skills. I'd love to have you back on in the future.
Sure.
You like I said, you have been a blessing for thousands and thousands of jazz musicians around the world. You certainly have had a profound impact on my life, and like I said, I've known you for many, many years, even though this is the first time we've officially met.
Yeah.
So I want to for myself and on behalf of all the thousands of jazz musicians who are now playing and enjoying this art form because of you, I want to extend a very heartfelt thank you.
You're welcome. And tell them if they want that jazz handbook, just go to jazzbooks.com.
Wonderful. Yeah, and it's jazzbooks.com. It's a wealth of jazz materials and information. So check out Jamey's website, get his play-alongs, and feel free to reach out to him.
Yeah.
And he'll get back to you. I know it. That's Jamey. So, Jamey, thank you again.
You're welcome, Bob. I really